speaks. Who said that?
Don't break the circle.
Who told you that? Turn on the light! Turn on the light!
Turn on the light! The light!
Cost. Look at Cost.
He did it. He broke the circle. All our hands were locked.
The ministry of fear. But it is impossible to go through life without trust. That is to be imprisoned in the worst cell of all, oneself. Her face looked ugly in the attempt to avoid tears. It was an ugliness which bound him to her more than any other beauty could have done. It isn't being happy together, he thought, as though it were a fresh discovery that makes one love. It's being unhappy together.
Is there space here for one more?
He had in those days imagined himself capable of extraordinary heroisms and endurances which would make the girl he loved forget the awkward hands and the spotty chin of adolescence. Everything had seemed possible. One could laugh at daydreams, but so long as you had the capacity to daydream, there was a chance that you might develop some of the qualities of which you dreamed. It was like the religious discipline. Words, however emptily repeated, can in time form a habit, a kind of unnoticed sediment at the bottom of the mind, until one day, to your own surprise, you find yourself acting on the belief you thought you didn't believe in.
Willie asked me if I was falling in love with you.
And?
I said, yes.
There are dreams which belong only partly in the unconscious. These are the dreams we remember on waking so vividly that we deliberately continue them, and so fall asleep again and wake and sleep, and the dream goes on without interruption, with a thread of logic the pure dream doesn't possess.
I know my record. You can send me back to the asylum on any charge. I don't care what you do with me. I tell you they did it. I ask you for one fair chance to prove it.
Nobody lives here. No cigarettes, no personal belongings, nothing.
He was filled with horror at the thought of what a child becomes, and what the dead must feel watching the change from innocence to guilt and powerless to stop it.
Forget the past. Just tell me the future.
In 500 years' time, to the historian writing the decline and fall of the British Empire, this little episode would not exist. There will be plenty of other causes. You and me and poor Jones will not even figure in a footnote. It will be all economics, politics, battles. A police photograph is like a passport photograph. The intelligence which casts a veil over the crude common shape is never recorded by the cheap lens. No one can deny the contours of the flesh, the shape of nose and mouth, and yet we protest. This isn't me.
Now, listen very carefully. Graham Greene, 2nd of October 1904 to the 3rd of April 1991, was an English writer and journalist regarded by many as one of the leading novelists of the 20th century. Combining literary acclaim with widespread popularity, Greene acquired a reputation early in his lifetime as a major writer, both of serious novels and of thrillers, or entertainments as he termed them. You've got it? Now, he was shortlisted for the Nobel Prize in Literature several times. Through 67 years of writing, which included over 25 novels, he explored the conflicting moral and political issues of the modern world. The Power and the Glory won the 1941 Hawthornden Prize, and The Heart of the Matter won the 1948 James Tate Black Memorial Prize, and was shortlisted for the Best of the James Tate Black. Greene was awarded the 1968 Shakespeare Prize and the 1981 Jerusalem Prize. Several of his stories have been filmed, some more than once, and he collaborated with filmmaker Carol Reed on The Fallen Idol 1948 and The Third Man in 1949. You've got it? Good.
the third man. You know what the fellow said. In Italy, for 30 years under the Borgias, they had warfare, terror, murder and bloodshed. But they produced Michelangelo, Leonardo da Vinci and the Renaissance. In Switzerland, they had brotherly love. They had 500 years of democracy and peace. And what did that produce? The cuckoo clock.
Please, for heaven's sake, stop making him in your image. Harry was real. He wasn't just your friend and my lover.
No, I don't know. I'm just a hack writer who drinks too much and falls in love with girls. You?
Me?
Don't be such a fool, of course.
Marlowe's devils wore squibs attached to their tails. Evil was like Peter Pan. It carried with it the horrifying and horrible gift of eternal youth. Human nature, too, has curiously twisted reasons that the heart certainly knows nothing of. It eased the conscience of many small men to feel that they were working for. Victims, don't be melodramatic. Look down there. Would you really feel any pity if one of those dots stopped moving forever? If I said you can have £20,000 for every dot that stops, would you really, old man? Tell me, to keep my money, or would you calculate how many dots you could afford to spare?
There's a third man there. I suppose that doesn't sound peculiar to you.
I'm not interested in whether a racketeer like Lyme was killed by his friends or by an accident. The only important thing is that he's dead.
The power and the glory. When you visualised a man or a woman carefully, you could always begin to feel pity. That was a quality God's image carried with it. When you saw the lines at the corners of the eyes, the shape of the mouth, how the hair grew, it was impossible to hate. Hate was just a failure of imagination.
I don't like it, Father. Now you look like any other man.
That was the idea.
You cannot control what you love. You watch it driving recklessly towards the broken bridge, the torn-up track, the horror of 70 years ahead.
Are you a criminal?
No, not exactly. I'm a priest.
Oh, that's too bad.
Thank you.
Hope was an instinct only the reasoning human mind could kill. An animal never knew despair.
Now, you don't have to speak. If he's here among you, all you have to do is look at him, and I will know.
There is always one moment in childhood when the door opens and lets the future in. We should be thankful we cannot see the horrors and degradations lying around our childhood, in cupboards and bookshelves, everywhere. What an unbearable creature we must have been in those days. And yet in those days he had been comparatively innocent. That was another mystery. It sometimes seemed to him that venial sins, impatience, an unimportant lie, pride, a neglected opportunity, cut you off from grace more completely than the worst sins of all. Then, in his innocence, he had felt no love for anyone. Now, in his corruption, he had learnt. It is one of the strange discoveries a man can make, that life, however you lead it, contains moments of exhilaration, There are always comparisons which can be made with worse times. Even in danger and misery, the pendulum swings.
I might just as well never have been born. But if my life has had no meaning, let my death not be the same. Let it be an atonement. Not to try to escape. I have had enough of escaping. Are you going to shoot me now? No. You'll be tried first.
And The Quiet American in 1958 and 2002. The 1936 thriller A Gun for Sale was filmed at least 5 times under different titles, notably This Gun for Hire in 1942. Got it?
Brighton Rock. She had an immense store of trivial memories, and when she wasn't living in the future, she was living in the past. As for the present, she got through that as quickly as she could, running away from things, running towards things, so that her voice was always a little breathless, her heart pounding at an escape or an expectation. It's a good world, if you don't weaken. Heaven was a word. Hell was something he could trust. From behind, he looked younger than he was in his dark, thin, ready-made suit. A little too big for him at the hips, but when you met him face to face, he looked older. The slaty eyes were touched with the annihilating eternity from which he had come and to which he went. Life was a series of complicated tactical exercises, as complicated as the alignments at Waterloo, thought out on a brass bedstead among the crumbs of sausage roll. It didn't matter anyway. He wasn't made for peace. He couldn't believe in it. Heaven was a word. Hell was something that he could trust.
This gun for hire.
She couldn't avoid being serious about things she cared for, and happiness made her grave at the thought of all the things which might destroy it.
Watch it, Copper.
It's Raven. Do what he says.
You stay where you are.
There's a dragnet out for you, Raven. It won't do any good to hurt her, so use your head.
Better stay put.
What's wrong with dear, anyway? Dear, dear. She tried it out on the tip of her tongue, between lips as vividly stained as a winter berry. Oh no, she's decided. I'll call you that when we've been married 10 years.
Who trusts anybody?
You couldn't very well complain to the police, could you?
I'm my own police.
What would you do?
First, I'd find out who you're stooging for. And I'd give him what I gave Baker.
Don't I? I can't stand violence.
Then I'd whittle off a little of that blubber.
Don't look so miserable. I thought you said you were happy. That was 5 minutes ago. Oh, she said out of her light and heavy heart. One lives quickly these days.
You still want that stuff from Gates?
Of course I do.
Help me out of here and I'll get it for you. What was that hot air last night? That flag wave. Okay, I'll shoot it out with him and I hope your copper gets the first slug.
Greene received an Academy Award nomination for the screenplay for Carol Reed's The Fallen Idol, 1948, adapted from his own short story, The Basement Room. Listen, he also wrote several original screenplays. In 1949, after writing the novella as raw material, he wrote the screenplay for a classic film noir, The Third Man, also directed by Reed and featuring Orson Welles. In 1983, The Honorary Council, published 10 years earlier, was released as a film, starring Michael Caine and Richard Gere. Not a lot of people know that. Author and screenwriter Michael Corder contributed a foreword and introduction to this novel in a commemorative edition.
They say you come to Vietnam and you understand a lot in a few minutes, but the rest has got to be lived.
The quiet American. Time has its revenges, but revenge seems so often sour. Wouldn't we all do better not trying to understand, accepting the fact that no human being will ever understand another? Not a wife with a husband, nor a parent a child. Perhaps that's why men have invented God, a being capable of understanding.
I have a lover. I like to watch her arrive with her friends at the milk bar.
Sooner or later one has to take sides, if one is to remain human.
You could be forgiven for thinking there was no war.
I wish sometimes you had a few bad motives. You might understand a little more about human beings.
Then you saw Fong.
So it always is. When you escape to a desert, the silence shouts in your ear.
I never, ever used to believe in love at first sight.
From childhood, I had never believed in permanence, and yet I had longed for it.
I haven't been able to get you out of my thoughts.
Always I was afraid of losing happiness. This month, next year, death was the only absolute value in my world. Lose life and one would lose nothing again forever.
And then something happens, as you knew it would, and nothing can ever be the same again.
Impregnably armoured by his good intentions and his ignorance.
Suffering is not increased by numbers. One body contains all the suffering the world can feel.
To be in love is to see yourself as someone else sees you. It is to be in love with the falsified and exalted image of yourself. In love, we are incapable of honour. The courageous act is no more than playing a part to an audience of two.
Innocence always calls mutely for protection, when we would be so much wiser to guard ourselves against it. Innocence is like a dumb leper who has lost his belle, wandering the world, meaning no harm. I shut my eyes, and she was again the same as she used to be. She was the hiss of steam, the clink of a cup. She was a certain hour of the night and the promise of rest. Perhaps to the soldier, the civilian is the man who employs him to kill, who includes the guilt of murder in the pay envelope and escapes responsibility. I never knew a man who had better motives for all the trouble he caused. Goodness has only once found a perfect incarnation in a human body and never will again, but evil can always find a home there. Human nature is not black and white, but black and grey. The Honorary Council. Pain is the price we pay for living a life worth remembering. Some people are just more comfortable in their own darkness. Sometimes the quietest people have the loudest minds. It is in the darkest moments that we find the strength to shine the brightest.
This is a top secret item. A map locating undercover activities. For each little pin here, there is one little spy. There, for example, our man in Jakarta, our man in Vienna, our man in Tokyo, and our man in Moscow. But the most unusual agent of them all was our man in Havana, a very likable chap in a most unlikely situation.
Frankly, when they asked me to be their man in Havana, I had no idea of how spies. But I had reasons for being willing to learn, and they were anxious to teach me. That man is one of my instructors. A diabolical expert at the cloak and dagger game.
My name's Hawthorne. You will come to know me better as 59200. I'm in charge of the Caribbean network.
It sounds like the Secret Service.
Look out, someone's coming. Slip into a cabin. Mustn't be seen together.
We have been seen together.
Don't argue, man. I know the ropes.
Our man in Havana. They can print statistics and count the populations in hundreds of thousands. But to each man, a city consists of no more than a few streets, a few houses, a few people. Remove those few and a city exists no longer except as a pain in the memory, like a pain of an amputated leg no longer there.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I meant it for my whiskey.
This is the first time I've been shot in the back. I'm glad it was by a woman.
They had the comfort of not learning from experience. He began to realize what the criminal class knows so well, the impossibility of explaining anything to a man with power.
I think we've got the Caribbean network sewn up.
Just put me in the picture.
I think you'll find the West Indies over here, sir.
I always mix up the East and the West Indies.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.